Well, I think we can get started this morning, so thank you for coming to Scaling Tableau for Success. My name is Eric Lewis, and give you a little picture here. Let's see if this works. Yeah, there I am. So Eric Lewis, I'm a senior data engineer at Transamerica, and I work in the data and analytics team. I'm based out of Denver, Colorado. Just a little bit about myself. I've lived in Colorado for about the last 17 years, and I've been with Transamerica as of next week, 13 years. So I've done a lot of various technical things within the organization. 2 kids, I've been married for a while, so we're happy to be presenting here. And for those of you that are unaware of who Transamerica is, in San Francisco, there's that building that looks like the pyramid, right? Sorry, I'll keep that down a little bit. And so we were founded in 1904 in San Francisco, California. Currently, we're headquartered in Baltimore, Maryland, and we are owned by a company called Aegon. And they're operating in 20-plus markets nationwide. And at Transamerica, we're really focused not just on retirement-type products, wealth, but we're also focused on health as well. So just a slide to tell you a little bit about our company. So this morning we want to share with you what Transamerica's journey was with Tableau Server. And it's an interesting journey because what we found is it's a journey that if you're not proactive with it, it can get out of hand pretty quickly. And it's a positive journey, but it's something that you need to get your head wrapped around. So when we, at Transamerica, when we started with Tableau Server, we started with a lot more questions that we had answers. And maybe for some of you that have, or starting out with Tableau Server, similar type things. A lot more questions that you have than you have answers. So in the beginning for us, this is what that looked like. We were having a lot of conversations with different business groups within the organization. One group in particular, I remember I referenced that up there. They wanted to replace an existing reporting platform with a solution that would integrate with an application portal, and they wanted to do internal as well as external reporting. But the data engineers, we had limited information. We didn't really know. We didn't understand the architecture. We really didn't understand how to support a modern analytic platform. So our early adopters, you could feel that Tableau popularity. You know, they were sharing their visualizations. You could feel that momentum. And we felt like we were almost being left behind. And back then, our early KPIs were as simple as, you know, those emails that you may get if you manage Tableau Server, the emails or the calls, always the same thing. Is there something going on with the server? That's always what we would get. And although I would say that's still a valid KPI, but we really didn't know how to diagnose or troubleshoot those types of issues. We were seeing a lot of high CPU alerts that we couldn't explain why those were happening. So back then, we didn't know what we didn't know. But when you think about planning a journey, especially a journey that you've never taken before, there's always a starting point. So what is that when it comes to planning an architecture upgrade with Tableau Server? Well, when you start with Tableau Server, your starting point is understanding, at least from our perspective, what is your current state? That's first. What's your current state? And what's your current usage? And we'll kind of walk you through how we did that. Next, we talk about being proactive. Proactivity with Tableau Server, as far as we're concerned, is key in being successful with having a successful implementation. And for us, that was doing our own personal research. And there's a lot of information out there that you can get, but kind of piecing all of that together and getting your head wrapped around what that information is. And a second piece that made us very confident as data engineers was doing training. We did some virtual training, and then we also did some in-person training. That helped us a lot to be very confident in what we were trying to do. And then also being behind recommendations that we were making to management on improvements. So. And next, pre-implementation planning. So we did a lot of planning, and even during our planning stages, we had a lot of aha moments. And we'll share just a few of those of what we found out when we implemented as well. Next, implementing an upgrade. What's interesting about this one, and we feel pretty proud about this, we were actually able to implement and upgrade ourselves as data engineers. We had a little help, but we actually drove the actual implementation and upgrade ourselves, from that single server to that distributed server environment. Next, post-re-architecture. So guess what, guys? Once you get to the point of if you're going to do a distributed environment, you're not done. there's more that needs to be done. So that continued monitoring and evaluation, that's something you're going to need to continue to do to make sure your implementation scales well for the amount of users that you have. And then finally, the destination. At Transamerica, good customer service is always our destinations and what we try to do, whether that's internally, and customers internally or externally. So this next slide represents a bad night's dream I had. Working in the industry for so many years, technically, I know that doing nothing would result in a bad customer experience. I remember one night I woke up, and the next day I talked to Frank, my co-speaker here, and I told him, I was like, we've got to do something about this. We can't just let this sit. We have to get our heads wrapped around this and be prepared for what's coming in the future. And actually, good thing we did. So where we started. This is a slide probably some of you, if you run Tableau Server, you're familiar with. It's the server status processes. It shows you the processes that's on Tableau Server. This is pretty standard. You can't get much more standard. Maybe some of you here have this. But it shows the configuration that we had back then, a single server with Windows, 64 gigs of RAM. And at that particular time, I want to, if you can focus on where it says standard default configuration, it shows the version that we were on, version 9.3, and we had 573 active users at that time. And that's between December of 2015 and February of 2016. So that's where we started, 139 desktops, 355 workbooks. So if you remember, I said that proactivity is key. So how do you get proactive? How do you even start? Well, my sales team, or our sales team rather, is here today. We asked our sales team some questions, what we thought were simple questions. Really, these questions are huge ones when it comes to Tableau. How do you scale Tableau for performance? How do you integrate Tableau with Salesforce? How do you make Tableau available externally in the DMZ? How do you make it available for Tableau Mobile? All these were questions that we were asking. And then you remember we did our own independent research, myself and Frank here. And for me, this link here underneath independent research, I kept on coming back to this link. For those of you that manage Tableau Server, this is one that you go to and you see these different configurations and trying to get your head wrapped around that. But again, formal training, we did the server administrator class and we did the server architecture class. And both of that's really helped a lot, especially the server architecture for me, because I'm a technical guy. So the how-tos really helped me a lot and made me feel very confident in what we were doing. And I can also say my manager's here as well. Thank goodness that we had technology support to be successful with this implementation, because without that, we could have made recommendations, but we really need them behind us. And they were behind us, and that's why we were able to do what we did. So our sales team, what do we do there? Our sales team suggested that we do what's called a server health check. And basically the way I would describe that, for those who are not part of Tableau, the Elite Support Program, that's called a deployment review. It's a scaled down deployment review. And we started out by opening up our Postgres and started to accumulate usage data. And the first part of that data, I think Scotty, was like 2.5 months, I think is what we initially went after. And so that identified some early KPIs for us. Usage rate, wait times, usage patterns, potentially high impact, and user attrition. And this other point that I make at the very end, early trends become more clear with time. So 2.5 months of data, it's not really a lot, really. But at least it gives you some clue. But the more time you start collecting this data, the better the bigger picture will become to you. So here's one of the early vises that we had. This is a usage rate. And what this represents is the average number of daily users that we were having. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see here, the trend line is going up like this, right? That orange there, if you look at the legend up in the top left-hand corner, it shows you the new users versus the existing users. So we were having steady growth within the organization, clearly. And for those, again, who use Tableau Server, here's one of the pre-built admin views. And again, you see the numbers starting to raise. And this was I believe this was in 2016, out to, what is that, July, I believe. So we were seeing the trends starting to go up. So our sales team, they recommended a few things. They recommended creating some onboard material to deal with the user attrition. And basically, for those, what is user attrition? It's basically people have come back, but they've not returned, right? So they've come one time, but then they've not returned. So that's kind of an interesting one there. Potentially high impact workbooks, identifying those. What are important to your users? Best practices, like for us, what we saw happening early on, you know that default project that gets created when you create a site? We saw a lot of use of that. That's really not good to do that. So we've been trying to kind of wean people off that as well. Optimizing hardware enhancement monitoring, they recommended TabMon. We didn't realize, but we had some other tools in the organization that was being used that we could have leveraged. Now we know about them. So, but the big recommendation was these three on the bottom, capacity planning. Option 1 was to re-architect for redundancy. Option 2 was to re-architect for high availability where you get redundancy, and then also add a load balancer into that mix. But looking at everything, being in the financial industry, and I know there's others here that are in the financial industry, this may look familiar to you. We put this on some of our disclaimers, right? Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Everybody's seen that, right? So you can make a recommendation, or you think you know where things are going, but there's no guarantees. But all you could do is try to account for what you think may happen based on what the data is. And our hunch was this is going to get bigger. And our hunch was correct. It did get bigger. So what we recommended as data engineers, well, after our training, you notice I have that in the parentheses, clearly Tableau Server usage was increasing across our organization. Wait times seemed to be holding steady. But here's really the big point that I want to call out to anybody who's interested in actually understanding this. When you have a single server, there's contention between two major processes, and that's VizQL and Backgrounder, right? They're very CPU heavy. So if you're seeing a lot of CPU type issues, the answer to that is splitting those apart, right? Taking them away from the same single machine. And you'll see during our kind of evolution of this, how we were able to move them apart and how that helped performance tremendously. So redundancy, as I mentioned, redundancy and high availability, isolating the VizQL and Backgrounder and load balancer. And then also, too, which was very important to our management team, was to get a better level of support. And that was the Elite Support Program as well. So when we upgraded, we also did Elite Support, which has been fantastic for us to have a dedicated TAM, or Technical Account Manager. And then also, too, within our implementation plan, we built in an architectural review because we were confident that we could do the upgrade ourselves. All right, so pre-implementation planning, Elite Support gave us a new team member. One of the things that she recommended to us was don't rush new versions. Gotta get that one right. New versions into production. Let them mature a little bit. That was important. Build out a development environment for production future state. What does that mean? Well, we actually have an environment that actually mimics our production environment, where we try different things, different configurations that doesn't affect our production community. We also have what's called a backup box. And what this is, every night we do a backup restore. So we always have a hot, swappable backup that we can pull files from, as an example. We've heard a lot of people that have seen our configuration say a lot of companies don't have that. We love it because it can help us out. So, because even if you're familiar with versioning, you delete it, it's gone. That's it, right? You'd have to go to backup, and we can pull that file. Benefits of scaling up versus out, versatility and high availability. And down here, there's this point about adding worker to help out backgrounders. So I thought I was really going to be really smart and get ahead of this before our implementation date. And I put a worker node out there. And my aha moment was any machine that you decide to use as a machine that's used specifically for backgrounder work needs to have all the supporting drivers that you're supporting. So I put that out there. I thought that was great. But then I had a bunch of failures when I came in on Monday morning. So my aha moment was, make sure you put your drivers on any machine that you want to use. So, all right. Attending TC16, I thought was very good last year for us in terms of planning. And we're at midway point. So, any questions about what you've seen so far before my colleague comes up here? Pretty straightforward. All right. So we'll have Frank come on up here, and he's going to take us through the rest of this here.
Good job, man. My name is Frank Sylvia. Here I am getting my hair done for the conference. So I've been with Transamerica about 17 years. I'm based in St. Petersburg, Florida. Have had a variety of IT-related roles throughout my career, but I've been supporting Tableau Server with Eric for about 3 years now. So when we actually went to do the implementation to the distributed environment, we wanted to do it ourselves. That was we wanted to get our hands on it, but at the same time, we didn't want to do it ourselves because we didn't want all the responsibility if something goes wrong. So to mitigate risk, we fortunately had a member of Tableau's elite support team on the phone during the implementation, and we also had a member actually meet us from Slalom at a physical location. So we had 4 minds there to kind of kick around what we were going to do. We determined, day 1, we determined what the configuration would be. We kicked that around, we added the load balancer, and then day 2, we actually did it. We did it on a Friday. So if something went wrong, we would have the weekend to recover from that. And one big thing that our elite support member told us was not to do our version 10 upgrade, because what we were thinking was that, well, we're under the hood, so we might as well, when we go to the distributed environment, we should also go up to version 10. But it made a lot of sense that if something goes wrong, you're going to have 2 factors there to work with to see what it was, and it makes it more complicated. So it turned out to be a good decision, because when we finally did go to version 10, we did have issues. So, and that's in a later slide. So let's see. So this is what our post re-architecture looked like. And after the 4 minds were involved, we came up with this configuration. We used all 24 cores. We have 4 VisQL servers and using 5 backgrounders. Now, the Tableau documentation at the time, and it may still be that way, says that you're supposed to use one core, one server for one backgrounder for every 2 cores, right? So worker 2 was an 8 core, so we figured we're going to put 4 backgrounders on that, and then we're seeking redundancy for the backgrounders, so we thought we got that by adding the 1 backgrounder to worker 1. It turns out later that wasn't the case, but that was our initial configuration. So everything seemed to be running smoothly after we did the upgrade. February came and we started to get more numbers. The support program gives you, I believe, 2 deployment reviews every year. So we had our official one in February, and we had 3 months of data to see some trends. And I have some of the slides I'll show you later. So we started to see a real increase in usage from those reports. So in March, we went to version 10, and when we did that, what happened, apparently version 10 puts more pressure on the data engines, so our worker 2 failed as far as extracts goes. Our data engine went down on worker 2, so no extracts were being produced, and then we noticed that our HA, if you go back here, what we thought was HA wasn't really HA for the backgrounder, because what was happening was 4 out of every 5 backgrounders were just failing. Extracts, I'm sorry. 4 out of 5 extracts were just failing, or subscriptions were failing. So we just had one, it wasn't a true redundancy, so it wasn't doing us a lot of good, and also we were getting a lot of CPU and memory errors on worker 1. So, because it's doing a lot of other things there. So, okay. So we went to this configuration. Now we gave up on a redundant backgrounder. we just went ahead and actually added 6 backgrounders to worker 2. You do get an error message when you do that, but it turns out that you don't have to have, you can have more than 1 for every 2 cores. So we went with 6, and that's pretty much what we've had up to this day. It's served pretty well. And if you look here, we've got about, at this point, we had 4,600 active users. When we began, we were around 500 right before we did the upgrade. So here's just more tweaking. Currently, we have 7 backgrounders. So this just shows active users for this admin view, roughly 6,000. And a general increase in usage. This is something that comes from the deployment reviews we're provided. We added some color to it, but it looks pretty much like that. This is a monthly concurrency in a 30-minute bucket. So as you can see, there's quite a spike there. And right now, I believe it's hovering around 260. But that's, so in any 30-minute bucket, you could have, according to that chart in August, we'd have 278. We could have a maximum amount of 278 users in a given 30-minute time period. So this kind of shows you our timing. I can't say we planned it this way, but it worked out. Right after we did the distributed environment, we had a little bit of a bump, and then right after we upgraded to version 10, see a very large increase in usage. So that's obviously our goal, is to try and, I put, keep performance flat is our goal. So as the usage increases, and hopefully that's what we're doing here. So this is just another slide that shows us increased usage. This is also from one of our deployment reviews. It's probably a little bit hard to read, but in January we were averaging 82 extracts a day, and in June of this year we are averaging 118. Well, I need glasses here, but yeah, that's okay. This is something that the sales team initially worked up for us, or in the early phases, and it shows wait times for compute and load. I mean, we focus more on the compute, the blue lines. And you can see there it's pretty steady trend of about 14 seconds for user wait time. So, and this is also from the deployment review. Now, on this one, the first one was around the time of the re-architecture, and the average background process was taking about 176 seconds. But if you look at the next one down, a while back, we also did some cleanup of some bad extracts and things like that. But it's around 96 seconds, and there's actually periods of time where the backgrounder is idle, where in the first one there was no rest for the backgrounders. They were constantly running, right? So, and this is more current. It's about 80 seconds now, and more idle time. So that's a good thing. So as Eric was saying, our destination is always a good customer experience. So now we're monitoring. We've got, just from playing with the different components, one of the things about a distributed environment is it lets you, scaling out versus scaling up, it lets you move those boxes around so you can kind of get a feel for how things work. So we continue to monitor and tweak things. We have a third-party product that we've always had that tells us about CPU and memory thresholds. And we have some new KPIs that we use. Right now, our focus is on to other things like best practices. We're in the process of working with Power Tools to have a program that helps us troubleshoot workbooks, and so we can send them back to the users and if there's problems with those, and also Power Tools deployment for SDLC. And this presentation kind of serves as a reminder. I would recommend that anybody put together a presentation, even if you're not going to present it, because we forgot that we did all this stuff, so it's very helpful. We like to think we keep the bar in the proactive zone by taking these iterative steps, and it started out with our personal development. Then we added a member to our team. We worked on our KPIs. We developed our infrastructure. We're moving on to best practices and governance now, and then review your steps and repeat. This is just a slide. It's a little bit alarming, just kind of to show that you're never really finished. Wait time's creeping up slightly. I think they've leveled out since I've taken this one, though. So, speaking of the new good customer experience, this is a quote from one of our customers. In the past, when integrating a new customer into our manual reporting process, it could take a month or more. This is from an IT service manager. With Tableau, we were able to open workbooks, update 5 filters and data connections, and publish the updated dashboard in under 6 minutes. And we are also seeing increased usage in Europe and in Asia. And that's it. There wasn't any questions to begin with, but if there's any now, please let me know.
How did you address DR specifically? Have you guys yet?
Well, we're in a VM farm as it stands, so there's some redundancy there. This is part of how we address DR is by having the repository with a failover passive repository. So it's a DR step. Currently, we're having some issues because we have a hot site in North Carolina, which actually takes a snapshot of everything in our main data center. But we're having some problems with the Tableau licensing because it requires internet, and our DR site is locked down. It's a bubble, so we can't. In a real disaster, it wouldn't be, but it has to be. So that's where we're at with DR.
Hello. Who are the main customers that are using Tableau? Is it the agents in the field that are using it, or is it mainly like home office type of folks?
Mainly internal. I don't know, Eric, do you have a better beat on the population of users?
So we have a variety of users, but they're mainly internal users. We have sales groups, we have operations team who's represented, compliance, you name it. We have some 35 sites in the organizations of different groups that are using it right now. We do have some intention of putting that externally, but for right now, it's mainly our internal instance of Tableau. So it's just mainly, I don't want to say mainly, it's internal people. Anybody else? Any other questions?
What are your thoughts on Elite? Give me your ideas on how the Elite process worked and how, just high level.
Well, to us, it was a great benefit because we've got this. You suddenly have an employee that knows a lot more about Tableau than, well, at least in my case. I can't speak for Eric, but you get them into the process, and you also you get that knowledge, but you also have that connection into other parts of Tableau because they work with other businesses. So you get that effect of kind of getting a pulse on the industry and what other companies are doing, and you share knowledge that way. It's been extremely valuable for us, and helps us sleep better too. So,
Yeah, I can. What was that?
Did you get their cell phone number?
Yeah, do we have her cell phone?
yeah.
I have her number, so.
Yeah.
There's another question over here, I think.
Go ahead if you can.
Yeah, just go ahead.
I wanted to understand your team structure, how you are structured. I mean, are you only administering the infrastructure, or are you also involved with data ingestion, data
That's, he asked a question about team structure and what the role of the team is, sounds like. So yeah, well, we have a 3-man team and potentially three BI platforms to support, you know, roughly, give or take, as they come and go. But we do everything, licensing. We try to help with development, but you know, we do our best. We try to fill the gaps. We try to get it over to the right person, basically. But yeah, we're kind of the central point of contact for the platform itself, including the desktop and the servers. So
and I think I heard something about data. So yeah, so we try to really push the idea of self-service, right? So we leave that pretty much up to the users. When it comes to getting back to their data sources, we have one single service account. We say give read access, you know, and that's how we do our extracts. But we kind of leave that governance piece up to the users. We kind of just have those sites set up for them. We set up the permissions for them, who they want to share with, but we kind of leave that piece up to them. Obviously, if something is performing poorly or if they have some problems with their workbooks and it's not working right, then of course we get involved. But we try to, in our organization, self-service is the future. So we don't only support Tableau, we also support Alteryx and other tools. And we try to get that mindset among our users, self-service is the future. And we're here for you when you need us, but try to do it yourself, and then we'll help you out.
But as the future growth continues with Transamerica and the number of users increase, we are looking at expanding the team, just not from infrastructure and administrative support, but also center of excellence, also to help in development, also to also apply data governance and starting to actually control data sources.
That's where my question was more pointed, because as these data sources grow,
Right.
how do you manage, and then do you still leave it on the users to manage their own data sources, or do you step in and say, we need these 5 data sources are used consistently, let's bring them into a warehouse or something?
Yeah.
That's our future step. That's what we're starting to look at. Say, how do we start controlling the data sources and help do that? Because we do want to be more. We do want the self-service. We don't want to lose that. But at the same time, we know companies as they grow, the whole concept of data governance, who has access to the data, why do they have access to the data, that is coming to play more and more.
So current state it is to the users, but future state you are. Thank you.
And along the same line of that too is also the software development life cycle, because if you start controlling data sources, there's more now change management that has to be applied. And that's why we're working with Power Tools and actually putting in some of the change management methodology we're going to install over the next couple months as well.
Yeah.
and then it's not self-service anymore. So.
It's self-service, a little more control.
Yeah, right.
What is the power? What is the last one that you?
So Power Tools, and actually Interworks was here. Power Tools has a tool called Power Tools Deployment, which allows you to move content between areas. So you can move them like between project to project, or what our plans are, we actually have a separate environment. So we're looking to go from environment to environment. So today, as probably many of you know, Tableau is locked down. You can lock it down to where people can only see certain things or they can't write, but it kind of keeps us involved in the process. So what we'd like to do end state with our elevation, we'd like to make it automated to where they could drop a visualization in a project and that automatically goes up to another environment where it's locked down. So that's what we'd like to try to do.
So migration between environments.
Correct.
Yeah, because as you know, requirements are now coming from finance. You have to do Sarbanes obviously. You got to have all that particular.
Yeah, they can't hear you. Just, no, it's on.
It's on. Okay. Sorry. So I mean,
Just repeat everything.
so basically, as requirements go on with financial reporting, using Tableau for financial reporting and stuff like that, they're wanting more change management. They want to make sure that all the guidelines are followed, all change controls followed, all kind of security approvals are done, and make sure that whatever's published out there for internal use, as well as sometimes external use, is actually been controlled, been tested, and been validated.
So that's a third party tool that
Yeah, but they're a partner of Tableau. Yeah, they're here, Interworks. So, yeah, Interworks.
All right, well, thank you guys for attending.
Thank you.